Hey, what's up, Internet? It is the end of the first day of Scourge League, and as you can see, it's about 1 a.m. I had a pretty good time leveling today, sort of. If you watched my last video, you know that I've decided to start with Siege Ballista, like an Iron Commander build. But I knew from a couple of test runs that leveling this build was pretty scuffed, and so we decided to try and level it with Toxic Rain and Caustic Arrow, which worked out okay. We had a lucky 5 link drop. I would say it still wasn't the greatest leveling experience. It's especially tough in the first, I would say, 2 to 3 acts, and then it kind of starts to catch up in Act 4. And then, like most Hierophant builds, right after you get Ritual Awakening, things start to pick up much more. And it was pretty smooth sailing after second lab. All the gear is pretty scuffed. I bought like an Iron Commander for 1C. And I think the Hero's Bite was also maybe it was like 2C or something. But they actually weren't very good, right? Because I'm still using Caustic Arrow and my Toxic Rain Ballistas. And I've also got a Frenzy, right? We'll be using that in the other setup too, for generating frenzy charges and applying frost bomb and stuff. Right now I've actually got it linked to cast on crit and despair for minus chaos res. But we'd be doing better, I think, with rares, right? That had like dot multi and chaos dot, stuff like that. It was just a campaign and I didn't feel like changing too much. It wasn't the worst leveling experience, but it's definitely a far cry from Holy Flame Totem, and I think if I wind up really enjoying this build, then I'll probably want to search for an even better way to level it, especially to improve those first couple of acts. But I thought we'd do our usual walk and talk on the first day. We'll do, looks like Estuary is a tier 1. I want to talk a little bit about this Scourge mechanic because it's interesting. In a strange way, it reminds me a little bit of Synthesis, where it's almost entirely about the crafting. Like, the value of this league seems to be, A, it's going to be able to juice endgame maps pretty hard, and B, there's a lot of value to be had in crafting buff high-end items. It just happens that this mechanic is a little bit more accessible on the low end, because whenever you put a white item into our little Scourge box here, white items always become rares. Blue items just stay blue, it seems, but white items always turn into rares when they get corrupted by this thing, which makes for a pretty decent leveling tool, right? I will say, so this meter fills up as you kill things after you socket the weird gross thing into your character sheet. This is pretty dangerous. I know that they mentioned, like, you'll stun and knock back enemies when you shift. The truth is, you stun and knock back enemies in a pretty small radius, and everything around this, like around the edge of the radius, is still going to see you in aggro immediately. So sometimes you just get bum rushed by like a whole screen of enemies, which might happen right now, right? Yeah, so do you see the radius of enemies? Like how many there were? I didn't knock back or stun, nearly that many. I don't know what the Dream Furnace is. We're going to learn about that together, apparently. That's the first thing. Anything has happened quest-wise in this league for me. And I doubt it's a coincidence that it happened on the first map. This is probably the slot that allows me to Scourge maps, if I had to guess. But you'll notice that I still have a blood meter, right? So I can go back into the Nightmare, but I still have my stacks of corruption. So it's even more dangerous for you to go back in each time. And I found it pretty dangerous even on the first entry sometimes because, like I mentioned, a lot of enemies are aggroed to you that are outside of that radius of that stun. And some of them are really dangerous because they have ranged attacks. Like, one of them seems to be a very, like, Divine Ire-esque spell. And depending on where those enemies are, like if you don't see them but they see you, there's another attack that's very, very dangerous. while leveling. It can be sketchy. And it looks like I'm building stacks of corruption faster in a map than I did during the campaign for sure. So there's a plus dexterity, cannot be frozen. You'll notice, yeah, the enemies in the nightmare can just drop scourged items too, which is kind of handy. I haven't found anything great off the ground from them. I did find a regular rare ring. That was actually really good. You also find a lot of items like this, right, where it's like you get a bonus to lightning damage, and then the downside is deal no lightning damage. So it's definitely like the Krangle League. So there's a lot of items you just wind up leaving. On the other hand, a lot of my gear, like my helmet, I had gloves for a long time. I have these boots. Oh, these are the other ones. I had Krangled boots that were pretty good. Wow, they did a lot of damage. I had a fair amount of corrupted items for most of the campaign just because I could just keep throwing white items in there and basically alching them for free. And it actually made capping my resist even easier because usually the downside either wasn't a resist penalty or I would get more resist than I was giving up. I just had to like balance them out a little bit. So as you can see, like, single target's like okay right now. Nothing amazing, but there's plenty to get you through the campaign. Like once you're, like I said, it's around Act 4 where I feel like Caustic Arrow and stuff starts to scale enough that you kind of feel okay. It's just the first couple of acts that we're gonna have to hammer out some kind of better leveling scheme. I do like that Expedition went core immediately. One of the things I will say about this league is that it's not like, it's a pretty big departure from some of the recent leagues in that you don't get a lot of variety of loot. Like the Scourge league is basically dishing out exclusively Scourge items. The ones you Scourge yourselves and the ones that they drop. It's not like they're dropping currency or other league mechanic loot. So I think it was good to have Expedition go core and start appearing, you know, as early as Act 6. So you have other league mechanics like Delve and now Expedition where you can kind of get like extra currency and things like that instead of always coming from the new league mechanic. I don't think I'm going to pop this third one. I'm pretty sure that's asking for trouble at 45 stacks. Let's go check out what is going on with this Dream Furnace thing.
You found the Dream Furnace? It was an ill-fated invention from a more hopeful time. It brought us only sorrow. But perhaps in your hands.
She didn't have much to say about it, did she?
Good.
The Blood Crucible has been expanded. Ah, okay. So now we have a map exclusive slot. I gotcha. So here we do have this little skill tree that improves our Blood Crucible. It's pretty straightforward, this skill tree. You're not going to be making a lot of very interesting decisions. It's more like what you want to get first in your progression. This Stitched Wounds, I was really hoping that this was going to be like really good at making Corrupted 6 links. What I found though was that it might still work for the 5 link that are like 5 link 6 socket, but I had some that were 6 socket and then 3 link 3 link. So there was only one missing link in the middle. And when this triggered on those type of items, it made a 4x2. So it actually broke one of the 3 links to make the 4 link. I wasn't really expecting that. So I'm not even sure it'll work that way with the 5 link and the 6 link. I'm kind of hoping it does, but we'll have to see. Otherwise, it's been pretty straightforward. You need 1 point to get the unique transformation. It takes 10 points to move up a tier, so you need basically 2 of them filled out completely. And then on this, like tiers like this, where it only takes 1 point for this, you're only missing 1 point on the whole row, right? And it's going to be like that again here and again, you know. It's just, it's all about what you want to get first and not so much like something you really have to think about. Plus, you can just reset all these for free at the NPC here. So, it's definitely a straightforward mechanic. I really like the aesthetic of the nightmare area. And I'm hoping that like there's a little bit more to that. Like maybe there's some bosses you can come across. I haven't seen anything like that. There's only been this one NPC, and all the monsters inside the nightmare seem to just be like a selection of, you know, regular monsters. So here's hoping there's some kind of boss mechanic or something, you know, a new dynamic to it. Otherwise, I think it's like it doesn't do a great job of selling itself to like low-level players, where you go in and maybe you like create a few rares and they have like an extra bonus on them. You know, I got plus 23 max life, minus 18 fire res. Like, this is neat, but it's not like that compelling, I think, to a low-level player or like an inexperienced player. And it's obviously harder, you know, in the nightmare than it is in the regular zone. So I'm not sure what to do about that, or if there's anything to do about it. But it has that. It reminds me of Synthesis in that way, where I think the expert players and the players that are already into maps, you know, they can see the value of the crafting of this, and it's more about, you know, juicing the higher end maps and trying to make some really busted corrupted items. But I kind of wish there was a little bit more at the lower end. I think that's one of the things that has been good about their recent league design, like with Expedition or Ultimatum, where you were getting like currency or something else, like sort of more obvious value, to where it was like enticing to newer players to do it during the campaign and stuff. I think a lot of people were probably skipping it, but I have been enjoying it, and so we'll see where it goes from here. I am super tired. I've been up almost 24 hours because I had to get up super early. So I'm going to wrap this video up here. Tomorrow, we will probably switch over into the full Siege Ballista setup. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to come by the stream, it's twitch.tv/WallachTV. I'll be streaming all week, I'm sure, trying to get this Siege Ballista build online. So until next time, peace.